In this video, we're going to look at Reason's main mixer as well as the master channel and the available effects and effects slots that we have there. In order for us to hear the output of a device in Reason, it must be routed somehow to the master channel. The master channel is fed by all of the mixer channels. So generally speaking, we see devices that are routed to mix channels in the rack, and then those sounds are taken into mixer channels in our main mixer, which are then combined into our master channel. First, let's look at some of the available effects options for the master channel. Here on the right, we see the FX return section for the master channel. And we'll cover more on how to use FX send and return functions in later routing videos. But for the purposes of this video, suffice it to say that we have two return effects, an RV7000 reverb and a pulverizer. We can control the overall level of these effects with the level knobs here and the global pan of these effects with the pan knobs here. These green buttons are their input meters. Directly above the FX return section, we see the master inserts section. And here's the spot where we can browse and save our master inserts, and 4 buttons and 4 knobs that line up to the 4 buttons and knobs of any combinator. Again, we'll discuss these routing concepts in later videos, but it's important to see where they are in the mixer now. The next section in the master channel is the FX send section. This is where we control the levels of the signal that will be sent to the send and return effects. Another thing that's important to see now, but we might not understand until a little later. Next up, in the dynamics section, is the master compressor. Just like many of the things in the main mixer, this master compressor is modeled after an SSL bus compressor, a very famous design of compressors designed to go over your entire mix, as opposed to the individual compressors in the mix channels for your tracks. So now let's look at our mix channels themselves, and we'll start from the top because in the visual system of Reason, these mix channels work from the top down. Here at the top, we have our input gain. We also have the option to invert the phase of that particular channel. From here, we can choose our signal path to the rest of the device. We can change the Dynamics EQ insert order by clicking Insert Pre or Dynamics Post EQ. Different combinations of these buttons will result in different signal chains. We also have the option to send our filtered signal to the Dynamics side chain. If this all sounds a little foreign to you, don't worry, we'll be covering these in our mixer videos. Now let's look at the dynamics section for our mixer channels. The dynamics section is made up of 3 pieces. There's a compressor, a gate, and a side chain, also known as the key. A compressor and a gate have essentially opposite functions. A compressor will reduce the volume of audio above a given threshold, and a gate will decrease the volume of audio below a given threshold. Both a compressor and a gate need to be listening to something in order for them to work. In a lot of cases, they're listening to the same source that they're affecting. In the cases where they're not listening to the same source that you're affecting, that's when you use the key or the side chain. It represents the other signal that the compressor or gate will listen to trigger its effect. So let's hear these in action on our drum channel. First, I'm going to turn the compressor on and play our song. Now I'm going to decrease the threshold and increase the ratio of the compressor. You could hear the compressor literally suck the volume out of our drum track. So let's turn the compressor off and listen to the gate. We'll start over. And as you can see, as the tail of each drum sound becomes quieter and goes below the threshold, the range knob is causing the gate to cut off the end of the sound, giving us a very quick staccato sound for our drums. These are pretty extreme uses of both a compressor and a gate, but it does show their functionality. Next, let's move to the EQ section. As we said in the last video, Pretty much every EQ is used for the same purpose. We're going to boost or cut specific frequencies. The differences between many EQs or filters is the curves which we use to boost or cut these frequencies. These are modeled after the SSL 9000, a very famous console mixer. Having only used an SSL 9K a handful of times in my entire life, I can't say whether they're a dead-on reproduction, but I can tell you that these main mixer EQs are phenomenal. First up in our EQs, we have the low-pass filter. This time, I'm going to use the guitar track, and a low-pass filter allows low frequencies to pass through. Next, we have a high-pass filter, which allows high frequencies to pass through. Next, we have 4 bands of traditional EQ. We have a high-frequency shelf, a high-middle frequency bell, a low-middle frequency bell, and a low-frequency shelf. On the low and high-frequency shelves, we also have the option to change them to bell mode. We turn on the EQ per channel here, and we can change the Q mode here with this E switch. I'm going to play with a few of the bands on our EQ here and see what kind of sounds we get. As you can see, we're able to boost or cut a pretty extensive range of frequencies. Going back down, we see the insert section for the mixer channels. These are exactly the same as the insert section for the master channel, and we'll cover how to use mixer channel inserts in a later video. The same goes for the FX send and returns. We will dedicate an entire video to the concept of sends and returns, but it's important to see it in action. My first return is a reverb, and my second return is a distortion. So I'm going to activate the reverb on my guitar track and the distortion on my drum track. A great thing about using FX send and returns is that they do not affect your dry signal. They're a separate signal blended back in. Let's hear how this sounds. Much different than our original song. The last thing that we want to look at on our mixer channels isn't strictly an effect, but certainly can be used that way. On each mixer channel, we have a knob for width and a pan knob to go left or right. We can use these to draw out certain effects. I'm going to experiment with the panning on our drums. As you can see, there's plenty of effects and functionality in the mixer channels and the master channel, and it definitely helps us to draw out our creativity from reason. Forgive my terrible pun here, but there's really no reason that we should let the mixer channels confuse us when they're so helpful. Now that we've seen a little more about what the mixer channels are capable of, let's move along to the next videos where we discuss routing. Thanks for watching.